So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, today we're going to be continuing the hadith. We have 10 hadiths left, and then we're going to transfer to doing our tafsir back again. So let's do our hadith. عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن أحدكم إذا مات عرض عليه مقعده بالغداة والعشي إن كان من أهل الجنة فمن أهل الجنة وإن كان من أهل النار فمن أهل النار يقال هذا مقعدك حتى يبعثك الله إليه يوم القيامة. Okay.
And the screen not show the Arabic.
Oh, you can't see the Arabic one? Okay, so you're only seeing the English. Okay. All right, so let's do it again. إن أحدكم إذا مات عرض عليه مقعده بالغداة والعشي إن كان من أهل الجنة فمن أهل الجنة وإن كان من أهل النار فمن أهل النار يقال هذا مقعدك حتى يبعثك الله إليه يوم القيامة. Okay, let's see on the authority of Umar. So when one of you dies, his seat is shown to him in the morning and in the evening. If he is among the people of paradise, then he's among the people of paradise. And if he's among the people of hellfire, then he's among the people of hellfire. It is said, this is your seat until God resurrects you to it on the day of resurrection. So I would say the translation is quite accurate. Let's look into it. إن أحدكم إذا مات عرض عليه مقعده بالغداة. So what does that mean? So when the person dies, there would be two angels, Munkar and Nakir. Munkar and Nakir are basically these two angels that would come forward in the grave. Munkar and Nakir would expose, or at least they would let him see all the records of what he had committed. And then, well, they would also ask him questions. ما ربك؟ ما دينك؟ ما تقول في النبي الذي بعث فيكم? So who's your Lord? What religion do you follow? What do you say about the prophet that was sent to you? And of course, other questions, what the person had done with their time, what they had done when they were youth, and what they had done with the ilm that they had basically gotten, and certainly the money and what they had spent it, where they got it from and where they spent it. All right, so those are certain questions that Munkar and Nakir, and of course they would be the two angels. So Munkar and Nakir are two angels, and they would also let the person know, kind of like a planner of what's coming up. That's so scary. Just imagine, like, okay, so this is a new stage. Here's a planner. Here's where you're at. You are right now going to be held accountable. The complete planner. This is what you had done. That was your place of hellfire. Now this is your place of Jannah. And they would get to see what that looks like. They would get to see what that looks like. Now, that's that part in this hadith. عُرْضَ عَلَيْهِ مَقْعَدُهُ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ. So basically, the person's grave would either be روضة من رياض الجنة or حفرة من حفر النيران. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. It would either be a garden, a part of Jannah, or it would be a ditch of hellfire. A ditch of hellfire. Now, it's important to see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send these angels, giving this person a whole outline of what's coming up, and letting them know that you're right now basically meeting your Lord Almighty, and there's going to be these different stages coming up. And certainly the person, if they had committed wrong, that's when of course, they'll be encountering for the first time. That's going to be the first encounter. Well, actually, it's going to be their second encounter, because the first encounter was while the person was dying. That was the first encounter. While the person was dying, the malaika were there telling the person, giving him the information, basically at least general information, that, and they're seeing the ruh leaving, they're seeing يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. Now they're officially seeing الملائكة. And if you were ever with a person that is dying, you would see that. Remember yesterday we talked about the secretions or al-gharghara that a person would have while they're dying? Even though the person is getting these secretions, but all of a sudden, there's a point. There's this point while they're dying, they all of a sudden would, just like as if they're awakened, and even their eye color, their pupil would change slightly, and they would start looking around, and they would start looking around as if exactly like you would look around. There's so many different things happening around you, and the person is looking around in each and every single corner, and you might think that they're hallucinating, but they're actually seeing the malaika. So they're looking around, and you all of a sudden would think, oh, they're fine. They're not gonna die. But no, they're actually looking around, seeing the malaika at that moment. At that moment, that final stage, the malaika are right now clear, and they're capable of seeing the malaika at that point, and they're looking at them, they're talking to them, and the malaika right now, فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ. Right now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, now is that moment, that pivotal moment when your sight is at complete strength. So hadid, it doesn't mean steel, but this basically is a metaphor. It's a figurative term. Yes, it means steel literally, but this is actually a metaphor to mean that it is at its complete strength and its complete power. So this dying person is not hallucinating, but this dying person is literally seeing what you cannot see. In fact, they're seeing a lot more things than what you can see. So that's why they would be looking around left, right, sometimes in fear, sometimes in happiness, but then they would still be looking around, and that's something that you could see. So while the person is dying, they will get either a congratulations, or let's say the bad news that, well, this is what you had committed and this is where you're going. So that was the first encounter with the malaika. The second encounter is in the grave. The first encounter, while the person was dying, they would know whether they're going to Jannah or hellfire. And while the person is in the grave, that would be the second encounter, asking them questions. And I want you to see that, just it's quite scary, and at the same time, you could see that everything is organized. Everything is organized. Even when they would come, they're introducing themselves to this dying person. You could see it's a completely organized session. This is who we are. This is this is what is going to happen. This is what we're here to do. And this person dies, then they would be buried. Then the malaika would come again. Okay, here we are here again. Where right now, this is who we are. This is what we're going to ask you. This is what this is going to mean. This would have been your place in Jannah. This would have been your place in hellfire. This is your ending place. And right now, you're going to stay in there. Very scary. And one thing to mention, of course, during that moment, not only will there will there be these questions that I had mentioned earlier? But along with the questions, of course, there's something very important to mention, which is Surah Tabarak. Surah Al-Mulk during that moment would be the one, if the person reads Surah Al-Mulk every day, then Surah Al-Mulk would be the one to advocate for the person to give him protection. And that's why it's called al-Munjiyah. Al-Munjiyah, meaning that it basically protects the person. You know, think of it as you probably have a special, like a promotion card, or you might have a special pass, a VIP pass. So Surah Al-Mulk would be this VIP pass to give you that protection. And this protection is basically the protection from the grave and the torments of the grave. We should work on Surah Al-Mulk. What if I can't read it? What if I don't know how to read it? At least listen to it every single day. And inshallah, with time, you will be capable of memorizing it. Put in the effort. All right. إذا كان من أهل الجنة فمن أهل الجنة. If he was part of the people of أهل الجنة. Why is it أهل الجنة? Is it literally like family? Yes, it's like family. But the word أهل could also mean the person to accompany something. So they would be accompanying Jannah, they would be part of Jannah, they would be dwelling in Jannah. Jannah would basically be their place of where they are family with everyone. But does it necessarily mean family as in family? Well, يوم القيامة لا أنساب بينكم. There's no relationship anymore, no family ties. Your mother is not your mother anymore. But she will, at one point, be your mother, meaning that you will be held accountable to be asked, well, what did you do with her? And I would like to say, you know, the first witnesses, you know, on Judgment Day, it's a complete trial. It's a complete court system where your thighs will speak and be witnesses. Your hands will be witnesses. Your mouth would talk on its own and witness what you had said, and it would, or witness what you had probably wanted to deny. Your mouth will be talking. Your body will be talking, and you might say, "Well, how is my thigh going to be talking?" That doesn't make sense. It's a piece of flesh, isn't it? Just like your tongue is nothing but a piece of flesh. If you stole something, your hand will say, I stole this, I took it. Your mouth, if it wanted to deny something, that's not true, and it will talk on your behalf. Just imagine. And it's important to mention that the first witnesses that would come forth are basically the people to accompany you the most. So you're talking about your parents, you're talking about your spouse. They're the most ones to accompany you. So in other words, if your parents or your spouse or your siblings have a lot to complain about you, well, maybe you need to just review yourself, because that's their witness in dunya. Is that going to be their witness in the hereafter as well? What is their witness going to say? And this is important to keep in mind. What is their witness going to say? Is their witness going to be in support of what you're doing? Or is their witness going to be basically coming in to confess and perhaps stand right there to say and speak of all the different things that you had committed? What is that witness going to come forward and say? So certainly, we're talking about, I guess, the most people that we pretty much have those tensions with, especially when we grow older and before the age of 40. Once you're at the age of 40, I guess things kind of change. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, حتى إذا بلغ 40 سنة, and what? And بلغ أشده. قال رب أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضى وأصلح لي في ذريتي. At the age of 40, things kind of change. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in Surah Al-Ahqaf, says when they would reach the age of 40, قال رب أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي. Now they're recognizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed him with so many different things, because probably his friends didn't get the same blessings, maybe didn't get the same successes that he got at age 40. By age 40, things become a lot clearer to the person. But if the person reached the age 40 and they are still not seeing and recognizing the blessings that they're living in, and not seeing that if it wasn't by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's support, they would not have made it this far, then they really got a problem. At age 40, they would recognize وعلى والدي, he would recognize حتى إذا بلغ أشده وبلغ 40 سنة قال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي and what? وأن أعمل صالحا وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه. Now they're recognizing the bounties that the blessings that their parents have contributed in their life at age 40. What about before that? At the teenage, they would try to find ways to sneak their parents' support because they would be so confident and self-manipulating themselves. And, well, they would be manipulating themselves, thinking that I can do it without their help. They're wrong. That's the teenage. And then they go into their early 20s thinking that I don't need my parents' support. I knew I could do this. They were wrong all the time. Then they get into trouble after trouble, probably prison, probably failure in school, maybe failure in life, so many different troubles, lots of different things happening. I guess parents were right. Then at age perhaps 25, they kind of get some things, starting to question. Maybe I guess they were probably right. In their 30s, I guess they were right probably a lot of things, but I could probably combine some of their recommendations along with my own experience. That's when they start combining the two at age 30. And then at age 35, maybe I should review some things better. And maybe I need to scrutinize the thoughts that I had better. And then by age 40, they'll start seeing that they were actually right about a lot of things. And then that's when that respect comes in. They themselves start to have their own children, and they would start feeling and getting the feeling of how when their children are being disobedient, their children are going against their recommendations, their children are doing the same thing that they had done to their parents. That's when they start recognizing what they had been doing all along to their parents at age 40. At age 50, the situation's completely different now. I definitely want to be friends with my father and mother before I would lose them. They're getting closer to their death. I want to be closer to my mother and father. At age 50 and 60, now I wish my mom was still alive. I wish my father was still there. And then, of course, at age, I remember my grandmother, I was bathing her. She was 73 years old. I was giving her a shower. And after I had finished, she said, she just gave me a hug. And she said, "You're my mama. You remind me of my own mother." And she started hugging me and crying me. I remember that like it's today. Just giving any simple contribution, even if it's giving a shower, cutting the nails, combing the hair, just general grooming, all of a sudden, that's what she remembers of her own mother. Even at age 70 something, they'll remember their mother by the most beautiful affection that she had given them. It's cutting their nails, it's combing their hair, it's giving them a shower, it's doing these small things, but then the older you get, these small things, you become so vulnerable and so weak to do them on your own. You can't even do these things on your own. You can't bend down to reach to your toenails anymore. You just become so weak to do these simple things. And subhanallah, those moments are the moments that you would remember. Rahmah, the mercy, and the most important person to resemble mercy in this life is basically the mother, the father. They're the most ones to have given you the mercy, the affection, the care. Even though at one point, of course, in your teenage, mother and father resembled nothing but meanness, nothing but they were just being authoritative. They were being bossy. They were telling me not to do this and not to do that. And at one point during your teenage, you would think that just resembles, they just don't want me to just enjoy my life. They just want me to live miserable. They just want me to live a hard life. They're asking me to do my homework. They're asking me to clean my room. They're asking me to eat healthy. That's so boring. Why are they making me do things that are not fun, that are not entertaining to do? They're just making me live miserable. And it isn't until later would they realize that no, it's that they were actually wanting to give you a happy life and not a miserable life. Okay. إن كان من أهل النار فمن أهل النار. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. And if the person was from the dwellers of hellfire, he would be from أهل النار, and the malaika in that grave would tell him, هذا مقعدك. This is going to be your placement. This is your final placement that is in hellfire. And this is your placement, and for the time being, in this grave, until you would be resurrected on Judgment Day. So now they're giving him a timeline. This is where you're going to be seated. This is going to be until Judgment Day, giving him a timeline, giving him a placement, and giving him basically the coming, at least the coming stage, and what next until Yawm al-Qiyamah. What about Yawm al-Qiyamah? A lot of different things are happening. You'll be informed then. And that's so scary, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. All right. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تسبوا الأموات فإنهم قد أفضوا إلى ما قدموا. لا تسبوا الأموات. Do not curse the dead, for they have already passed on to what they set forth actually. لا تسبوا الأموات فإنهم قد أفضوا إلى ما قدموا. Well, what does it mean to not curse them? So سب الأموات is basically bringing forth or exposing their wrong deeds. Don't expose their wrong deeds. Don't swear at them, because at the end, they're not here to defend themselves in any way. And now they're actually إنهم قد أفضوا إلى ما قدموا. Right now, they are transparent. They are exposed. أفضوا, الإفضاء is basically when you are face to face with the different things that they had basically presented. If they had said a bad word, now they're going to be facing that bad word. If they had stolen something, now they're facing it. If they had missed out on their prayers, now they're facing it. If they had been rude to their parents, now they're facing it. There's nothing, you don't need to say anything. Because during life, you might have wanted to say something because you wanted to bring an end to it. Right now, bringing an end to what? The person is dead. So what should you do? Well, the Prophet ﷺ is telling you from the adab, just recognize this is right now, fidar al-haq. This person is right now face to face with whatever they had committed. Don't say anything about them. They're already facing their what they had committed. They're already facing, of course, the results of what they had set forth. So to have that adab in speaking about the dead, it's very important to remember, whether alive or dead, bring about the good about people. And this is important. Umar ibn al-Khattab had said, اقضوا على الشر بعدم ذكره. Let me write that down. This is important. اقضوا على الشر بعدم ذكره. Let's write that down. اقضوا على الشر بعدم ذكره. What does that mean? If you want to eliminate evil, just don't talk about it. Talk about, in other words, let's flip it. If we're going to flip iqdu, we're going to say revive. Instead of shar, we're going to say al-khair. بذكره. Let's flip that one. So if we're going to say iqdu, if we're going to flip it, then we're going to ihyu. Al-khair بذكره. That would be the opposite. Okay? اقضوا على الشر بعدم ذكره. If you want to eliminate evil, just stop talking about it and stop bringing it up. Because the more you bring it up, the more it becomes normalized within the society. So Umar ibn al-Khattab was telling us, well, you want to eliminate the bad from yourself and from the society. Just don't keep on bringing it up, because the more you talk about it, the more you bring it up, the more it becomes normalized. And we had seen how a lot of the crimes are really replicating exactly what Hollywood is presenting. Hollywood is presenting one thing, whether it's the bad words or whether it's the bad behavior, whether it's all the different wrong things, and then people would become accustomed to it. And of course, Hollywood is presenting the bad people as if they were the heroes. And certainly to be cool is to say bad words. To be cool is to be the person that is an outlaw, the one that breaks all the rules, is basically the cool person. The nerd is the smart one. And of course, the smart one, being a nerd, he's basically looking stupid and looking like a weird person. So what happens? We basically end up in a community that the nerd, the smart one, the religious one is seen as dumb, is seen as a fob, is seen as a person that is weird, and the person that is basically probably on drugs, on alcohol, probably on zina, etc., as the one that is cool, the one that is smart, the one that just knows how to get around. And then, of course, without us realizing, that becomes normalized within the society. So Umar ibn Khattab said, "Iqdu ala al-sharri ba'adami dhikrihi." Just don't expose it, don't bring it up, don't keep on talking about it, whether we're speaking about the people that had committed that, which is a dead person or a live person. So what should we do? Well, just like we said, ihyu al-khayra bidhikrihi. You want to bring al-khayr, you want to spread al-khayr. Mention the stories of Salihin. Mention the stories of ulama. mention the stories, and we need more podcasts, for example, of scholars or of salihin, of people that contributed good things within the society, more stories of that in order to make it more common for people to see, to want to replicate, to want to mimic, to want to be a part of, to see them as basically the leaders that they would want to embrace. So whether the person was dead or whether the person was alive, اقضوا على الشر بعدم ذكره. Don't keep on bringing it up. Try and work on mentioning what is good. Even if you hear within our society, maybe there's zina, don't keep on talking about it. You know, there's this is what they do. This is how they go to it. Don't mention these things. اقضوا على الشر بعدم ذكره. Talk about the good. Talk about the salihin. Talk about those that had been holding on to their religion despite all the fitan. Talk about those that had memorized the Quran, those that had gotten a degree in Islam or gotten a degree in ijazat or anything of that sort in order to encourage the young and encourage the old, encourage the men and the women. Okay. عن المغيرة بن شعبة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: لا يزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين حتى يأتيهم أمر الله وهم ظاهرون. This one is quite interesting. This hadith, there's a lot to say in that regards. Let's see how he translated it. A group of my nation will continue to be victorious until God's command comes to them while they are victorious. لا يزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين. لا يزال means that there will still be. In other words, it's something that will always be present, something that will always be there. And this reminds me of another hadith. The Prophet ﷺ in the other hadith, بدأ الإسلام غريبا. Maybe we should get that hadith out for a bit. بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا. Let's see this hadith. Right? Let's just look into this hadith for a bit. Here we go. Let's go for this one. Let's see. بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا كما بدأ فطوبى للغرباء. Okay? وفي رواية من الغرباء قال الذين يصلحون إذا فسد الناس. Okay, so what is this hadith saying? This is a lot similar to that hadith. Let's look into it for a bit. بدأ الإسلام غريبا. Islam started out in a strange way. Well, how strange? So just when the society had been so indulged in polytheism and paganism and so distant away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the point that it basically appeared that religion or revelation had completely been forgotten. Even the message that Prophet Isa alayhi salam had come with, it basically, with time, it became so forgotten, whether due to political pressure, whether due to the different addition that happened to the actual revelation, etc. It became so forgotten as if it was not even there. And then Islam comes in the midst of all of this as a prophecy to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had previously mentioned in Genesis, mentioned in Deuteronomy, mentioned in the Old Testament, and mentioned in the New Testament. And then the prophecy comes along, and certainly Islam out in this desert, in the middle of this desert, in the middle of all these people that were very simple and away from all civilization, comes, of course, Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Islam started out in a strange way. وَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا. What does it mean that سَيَعُود? سَيَعُود? When you say سَيَعُود, it will come back. And the word غريب, in a strange way. Well, what does it mean to be in a strange way? Meaning that the data that preceded all of this was not showing signs of anything anything to show any victory or any change, any political changes. It completely was coming, let's say, in an odd way that no data, or at least clear data, was showing any signs of anything making a major change as that. Okay? So just like when you look at, let's say, what happened in Syria, it was really coming, yes, we knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to bring victory, but all of a sudden we're seeing this new group coming in, this new group going into Dimashq, and what happened? Same thing what happened to Gaza. This group that we thought was going to be wiped out of Gaza, we thought they were all dead. Now they're coming out with Toyota cars, 2025. Where were these people hiding these cars, going out in the streets? Now they're actually standing in full power in amongst the people. How did these people come back like that? Wait a minute. There was no sign, no data of showing any group that was going to be in any way still alive, at least. They thought that these people were all dead. Nothing was giving any data to a country that has, like Israel, that has the highest level of intelligence, at least with the Shabak and with the CIA backing it up. And of course, now we know it's so obvious when Trump comes in and says, okay, you're going to end the war. But of course, doesn't mean that that Trump was pro-peace, because he's already approving a 2,000 pound or 2,000 pound of or 2,000 tons, sorry, pounds, tons of explosives and all of that. Now, definitely not pro-peace, but in the end, is that at one point ended, and certainly you could say that the true ones, the real ones to back up the war, were actually the U.S. itself, were actually the West, were actually the ones to be behind Israel. And Israel is nothing but the puppet in the hands of basically those that are on the outside, which basically is the US, UK, France, and certainly other countries as well. So in the end, they would think that Islam was completely eliminated. They would think that they're going to wipe out Islam. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا كَمَا بَدَأَ. But Islam will come back in a strange way, where they definitely did not expect this comeback of Islam. And, if you were to go back in history, of course, I'm sure Sister Umayyah would remember all of this, because if you were to go back perhaps in the 70s, 60s, and 50s, during that time, hey, we're talking about the baby boomers right now in their teenage, okay? What happened during that time, whether you're speaking about America, the West, or whether you're speaking about the Muslim world? The Muslim world at the time, ironically, was all turning into communism. This is real. This is real. The Muslims were basically getting scholarships to study in Yugoslavia, study in Russia. The USSR was fighting the deen the same exact way that you would see Bashar al-Assad, where even if you had a Quran, that was enough for you to get executed. If you were seen praying, that's enough to get basically the rule to accuse you of being a terrorist, get executed, and the list goes on. And therefore, of course, that resulted in a whole Muslim society forgetting their religion. completely forgetting their religion because they couldn't teach their religion. Remember the Uyghurs? It was talked about and what they were facing in China. That's exactly the same kind of elimination for the Muslims, Islam in USSR, in even Muslim countries. So in Muslim countries, we're talking about Tunisia, we're talking about Syria as well. That was the same way. If you were probably wearing hijab, it's enough to probably end up getting in prison and get raped in prison. This is real. Put in dungeons. Somalia faced the exact same thing in 1989 and 1988. Then, of course, comes in out of course, when the least unexpected thing, we had basically the Afghans defeat USSR in 1989, and that was a complete change in everything. Noura, I know you want to say, let's go back to the hadith, but I think it's important. This is relevant to the
Well,
hadith.
I had a question. So I heard is this a hadith? So if you suppress Islam, it will become stronger, and if you leave it, it will spread?
It's not a hadith. It's not a hadith.
Okay.
It's not a hadith. It's more of a scholar's, I guess, note and review.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I asked you.
Yeah, it's
Just
not a hadith. But in general, if we were to go back in Islamic history, we would see that certainly when the Muslims were living, let's say, if we go back in history during the time of Khilafah al-Abbasiyya, they were right there dependent on, hey, we've got a civilization, and then comes out of nowhere comes the Mongols killing 1 million people in Baghdad alone, and where the dead were, the corpse were just everywhere, that people had to leave the area because the dead corpse were just a lot more to carry than to bury them, so they just had to leave the city. Just imagine that. And then the Mongols would continue their way and go where? And go basically to Damascus. And then finally they get defeated in Jalut and by, of course, Qutuz and in al-Zahir Baybars and all of those. And then Islam comes back again. You know, you want to keep in mind that at the time, they actually thought that those were Ya'juj and Ma'juj, the Gog and Magog. That's it. We're just really Yawm al-Qiyamah. There's no coming back. There's no victory coming. We're just waiting for Judgment Day. That was it. But of course, you will still have, that's that point. وَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا كَمَا بَدَأَ. It will come back in a way that is rather strange, the same way that it started out, where unexpectedly coming back and unexpectedly with going against all the data, it would come back. Same thing when you had the Crusades, when the Crusades had defeated the Muslim Ummah, and guess what? The treason was committed by even the Muslim leaders. The treason that was committed by the Muslim leaders to go against even those that are trying to bring victory. Just like today, you have UAE basically backing up Israel. You have Saudi Arabia backing up Israel. You have Jordan backing up Israel. You have
or even
all
the Palestinian
or
Authority.
even the Palestinian Authority. What? Hey, good girl. Or even the Palestinian Authority basically backing up Israel, right? Or even Egypt backing up Israel. You would see all of that. All right. So this is not unprecedented. Such treason and such treacherous behaviors were there throughout history, and of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would only give us glimpse of what would happen, but then the Prophet ﷺ tells us وَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا كَمَا بَدَأَ. It will come back, don't worry. This actually reminds me of another hadith, that other hadith where the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned تَكُونُ فِيكُمْ النُّبُوَّةُ. Let's look at that one. تَكُونُ فِيكُمْ النُّبُوَّةُ مَا شَاء اللَّهُ لَهَا أَن تَكُونَ. We mentioned that hadith before, but let's look at this hadith. Let's see. This hadith right there. تكون نبوة فيكم ما شاء الله لها أن تكون. So this hadith is actually إسناده حسن. Let's see, here we go. They said محقق الإسناد. They said إسناده حسن, and in other words, it's a level of at least an authentic hadith. Okay, let's see. He said تكون النبوة فيكم ما شاء الله لها أن تكون. النبوة, which basically is the stage of prophethood, the Prophet ﷺ would be amongst the ummah for as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills him to be there for. And then ثم يرفعها الله إذا شاء أن يرفعها. So now, just like you remember how the malaika, when they come into the grave, they would give the person a timeline of what's coming up and where this person's at and all of those different things. That's the same thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even gives the ummah a timeline of what's going to happen in order to prepare, to be in caution, all right, in a cautious behavior, and to basically just know what's coming up, and to also recognize which side are you supposed to be on. Let's look at this. تكون النبوة فيكم ما شاء الله لا أن تكون ثم يرفعها الله إذا شاء يرفعها. النبوة, prophethood, would stay as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it to stay for, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would raise it. What does it mean, raise it? In other words, brings it to an end. Okay. ثم تكون خلافة على منهج النبوة. Then the second stage would be khilafah. It would be, what's a khilafah? Khilafah would be a rule that would be on the same manhaj. Manhaj means that it would be on the same path. It would be based on the same paradigm. It would basically follow the same method. It would follow the same rules that Nubuwah that had ruled before was already working in, which basically would be on the path of the Prophet ﷺ. It would still take the same principles and basically live based on those principles. Then it would stay as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it to stay for, and then it would rise. Now I want you to keep in mind, the Prophet ﷺ basically stayed as a prophet for 23 years. So we're looking at 11 years in Medina, 12 years and 9 months, give or take, in Mecca. Then Khilafah was from 11-year Hijrah. That Khilafah, we had the Prophet, well, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Uthman bin Affan, Ali ibn Abi Talib. We had that last until 40-year Hijrah. Okay, 40-year Hijrah. So that was a Khilafah ala minhaj al-Nubuwah. Then, of course, Mu'adh ibn Abi Sufyan and Ali ibn Abi Talib go into basically a dispute over when and who's going to basically not only be the following Khalifa, but also should we consider looking for a Khalifa first, or should we consider finding and basically running after those that had committed the crime in killing Uthman bin Affan. So that was the dispute. They go into those wars, but then in the 41-year Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ had already mentioned a prophecy about al-Hussein or al-Hassan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Hassan, would basically be the one to reconciliate between two major groups. That was Al-Hassan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. So basically the Prophet ﷺ's grandson. In the 41st year Hijrah, Al-Hassan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib basically steps down from wanting to fight for Al-Khilafah, and basically gives Ali ibn Abi Talib basically the power to be the Khalifa, and would, in that moment, we would have the emerge of a new Khilafah, which is the Umayyad Khilafah. So that started out 41-year Hijriya. To make the story short, from 41-year Hijriya until 132-year Hijriya. Wonder if we could actually write on that. So, okay, so can we write on these? Let's see. Does it allow me to write? Hold on. Let me see if I can write. Let's see. So this one was until, it's not allowing me to write anything. Okay. It's not allowing me to write. Sorry, everybody. But let's see if I can use a different pen. to right. Okay. Okay, so this one was until 11-year Hijrah. This one was until 40-year Hijrah. Okay. This one was from 41 until 132-year Hijriya. 132, at least, that was the Umayyad. Okay, but let's see. So what happened during that stage? فَتَكُونُ مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَهَا أَن تَكُونَ. فَتَكُونُ مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ أَن تَكُونَ. It would stay for as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it to stay for. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will basically raises it. This is al-Khilafah ala minhaj al-Nubuwah. But here, this is the Mulk al-Aad. Al-Mulk al-Aad would be basically, here we go, this would be this one, which is, what is al-Mulk al-Aad? Al-Mulk al-Aad, it would have some oppression. It wouldn't be completely just. There would be some tyranny in it. There would be, let's say, some injustice in it, but they would still rule by Islam, but it would not be completely as the way that the Prophet ﷺ had laid out what Islam's principles are. Well, that wasn't just for the Khilafah Umayyah, but then later we had al-Khilafah al-Abbasiyah, which basically ruled from 132 until 656 Hijriya. Okay? And of course it continued, and then still on the same path of al-Khilafah al-Abbasiyah. Then we later had Ayyubid, we had al-Mamalik, etc. All of that was until, well, later, of course, then we had al-Khilafah al-Uthmaniyah, and that stayed until, well, Khilafah al-Uthmaniyah ended in March 23, 1924. That was the end of al-Khilafah al-Uthmaniyah. Okay, so what happened? ثم يرفع الله إن شاء أن يرفعها. Okay, so up to here, that was basically all of it was still within the parameter of Islamic ruling, but then comes in a mulkan jabriya. Al-mulk al-jabri, in other words, it's a monarchy, but a different kind of a monarchy. It was a monarchy that was enforced, that was forced monarchy. It's another country basically forcing and enforcing a certain power, and it's not something that the country or the Muslims themselves accepted, but it's something that was basically induced from the outside. And that happened in 1917, basically with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and certainly dividing the Muslim countries, and of course with UK getting involved, and of course the other colonizing powers. That's when they did what they did, and whether we're speaking about Asia and Pakistan and all of the different stories that happened in Pakistan and Bangladesh and all of those, and whether we're speaking about the Middle East, same thing. We're talking about mulkan jabriya. It was basically a certain power coming in, assigning a certain leader that would be an ally to the Western powers. The Western powers would be the ones to actually rule. And then, of course, in the image of a Muslim person, but this person is actually an ally to these Western countries. Okay. Then, of course, this stage stays ruling, mashallah laha an takun, for as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it to stay for, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises it, and then now this is that point right there. Okay, so how long does this mulk jabri stay for? Allahu a'lam. Well, just like we had, this was for 40 years, this one was rather longer. We're speaking about this one, and that stage was almost, what are we looking at? We're talking about almost 1,300 years or 1,200 years in the second stage. And this one, who knows how long this mulk jabri is? Well, definitely with the Arab Spring coming in, and if we were to go back, even the Muslim Ummah at one point in the 1950s, in the 1960s, and 1970s, the Muslims were basically embracing communism. Even if you were to wear hijab, it was so odd and so strange. So odd and so strange in a Muslim country to wear hijab. I remember when we came back in 1992. So we were in the US. I was born in the US, but then my father decided in 1992 that no, don't want to raise my daughters, my kids in America, took us back to Palestine. And my mom was training us to wear hijab in America, but I was 13 years old at the time, and I started asking my mother, just walking down the streets of the old city of Al-Quds, I was asking my mother if these people were even Muslim, because I didn't see anybody wearing proper hijab, and very few people wore hijab. Literally, very few people wore proper hijab. Everybody was basically not dressed properly. Very few people were even praying. And when I went to school, I was, in America, I can understand people questioning why I was wearing hijab, but imagine in a Muslim country like in Palestine, I was not going to an international school, but I went to a Muslim school, and they were asking me why I was wearing hijab and that I was too young, even though I was 13 plus. Just imagine that in a Muslim country. And the kids were always questioning the teachers. I remember the teacher, when I wanted to wear the proper hijab, she said, why are you going to a strict path? Why are you becoming too strict? You're fine the way you are. When I wanted to wear, proper hijab, I was wearing like a long shirt and baggy pants, and that was basically with a hijab. But it was time for me to go for another stage and wear, like kind of like a abaya. It wasn't abaya at the time. We didn't have abayas. It was called a jilbab. So I wanted to buy that, but then the principal objected. It was a funny story. So the principal objected, and I went to her and I said, do you require a certain color for the jilbab? And she said, you're fine the way you're dressed. And I said, I asked you a question. I said, do you require a certain color? And she said, you're fine the way you're dressed. I said, I'm not asking your opinion about my clothes. I'm asking you, are you requiring a specific color? And she said, we don't require a certain color. I said, thank you. That's all I needed to know. So the second day, I basically go and buy a jilbab and wear, it was like purple kind of, the hijab. It wasn't I don't know what, it was a purple, reddish, burgundy, maybe they call it burgundy now, something like that. And I went to school with it, and she was shocked. Burgundy, there you go, burgundy. And she was shocked because she didn't expect that. And believe it or not, the students, I mean, we were talking about almost 3,000 students in school. And there were only 2 teachers that wore hijab. Out of all the teachers, all the staff and all of that, only 2 teachers. Or was it 2 teachers? Yeah. And in a Muslim country. Okay, that was in 1992. But then, of course, a big leap happened. People started coming back to Islam in 2012. There was a massive change in 2012. People were getting a taste and a sense of victory when in Muslim countries, the Arab Spring were basically now going into that downfall. People started getting a sense of victory, and it was it was bringing people back to, I guess, coming back to Islam. But then 3 years later, when things were going in a different direction, then you had another wave of taking off hijab, another wave of leaving the religion, another wave of going into atheism, feminism, and the list goes on and on. Forgot to mention there was a wave of coming back to the religion in 19, if I'm not mistaken, 1999, perhaps, I think it was that. Was it? I can't remember exactly. But anyhow, so ثم تكون خلافة على منهاج النبوة. So what is after all of this mulk jabri is basically something coming that is completely unexpected, and that is a خلافة على منهاج النبوة. خلافة على منهاج النبوة, it would be a khilafah basically going back to a better practice. Look at this one. When you say خلافة على منهاج النبوة, it didn't describe not even الخلافة الأموية or الخلافة العباسية, despite all the great contributions that they had contributed in the history of Islam. But the Prophet ﷺ described that the khilafah that is coming is even a better practice than the time of al-Khilafah al-Umayyah, al-Abbasiyya, al-Mamalik, al-Ayyubiyin, al-Uthmaniyin, and that it would actually go back to the same system that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Uthman ibn Affan were practicing and ruling by. Just imagine that, what kind of contribution is going to be coming in, what is going to be the power that is going to make all this change. And certainly every single transition actually means a lot of contribution. It means a lot of wars. It means a lot. And you want to keep in mind when we're looking at all of this, look at this one, فَطُوبَى لِلْغُرَبَاءِ. Even though scholars debated on whether that was the wording of the Prophet ﷺ or whether that was the wording, and it's called al-Mudraj, the wording of the narrator, فَطُوبَى. What is طُوبَى? طُوبَى is bringing glad tidings. It's kind of like saying congratulations, or kind of like saying that the ones to be not congratulated, but the ones to be, I guess, considered. They're the ones to be طوبى. They're like a big reward. للغرباء, for those that are strange. Why strange? Because they would be the ones to contribute in the midst of a society that is making them doubt victory, that is making them doubt where they're going, but they would be the ones to stay strong. They would be the ones to stay committed to truth, to stay committed to Islam, to stay committed to the path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had basically taught in the Quran and Sunnah. So there would be the ones that would appear strange, appear as odd, appear as rare. Not many people are doing what they're doing, and not many people believe in what they're believing, and not many people are committed to that practice, the principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they would appear rather strange, rather they're doing the wrong thing, rather they're really taking themselves to nothing but failure, but loss, but probably taking themselves to really no success in any type of success in dunya or akhirah to the people. And let's see. In another narration, قِيلَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ مَا الْغُرَبَاء. In another narration, they asked the Prophet ﷺ, and who are these strange ones? They know what the word means. They're not asking about what the word means, but they were basically asking, well, what is it that they would be doing differently that would make them stand out? Why would they stand out as appearing different? And the Prophet ﷺ responds, الَّذِينَ يُصْلِحُونَ إِذَا فَسَدَ النَّاسِ. When everyone, الَّذِينَ يُصْلِحُونَ إِذَا فَسَدَ النَّاسِ, they're basically the ones that would be committed to principle. What is يُصْلِحُون? يُصْلِحُون means آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا صَالِحًا. meaning that they would be committed to the faith and they would be the ones to embrace the principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِذَا فَسَدَ النَّاسِ, when everyone else had basically lost their commitment. Everyone else lost the commitment. Everyone else basically is living based on secularism, feminism, LGBT, the list goes on and on. Or in another narration, يُصْلِحُونَ مَا أَفْسَدَ النَّاسُ مِن سُنَّتِي. In another narration, they would be the ones to correct, to remind, to basically revive what people had lost from the Sunnah or from their Prophet ﷺ's practice and from that principle. So you could see, here we go. This is also in Sahih Muslim. بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا كما بدأ فطوبى للغرباء. Okay, let's go back to that hadith right there. So فطوبى للغرباء, this would take us to the other hadith right there. لا يزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين. They would be basically standing out. They would be the ones to appear as the ones that ظاهرين, they're different. Something about them is rather odd. They're غرباء, they're ظاهرين, there's some group that's standing out. They're called out, probably given labels, maybe terrorists, maybe different labels as weird as the one backwards, etc. There's a certain group that would be called out by the rest of the people. By the rest of the people, they stand out as different. And حتى يأتيهم أمر الله وهم ظاهرون, until the victory would come to them and they are still standing out. And what does that mean? So when you look at this hadith, scholars actually debated on who really are these people and who's referred to by this hadith. Is it the people in Palestine? Because there are other hadith that do say that certain people near Asqalan. Asqalan is right now by Israel, called Ashkelon. Beautiful, beautiful area. I went there. Asqalan is basically just 20 miles from Gaza. And Gaza was actually part of Asqalan. All right? Is that who it's talking about? Or is it Bilad al-Sham? Is it Bilad al-Sham? The Prophet ﷺ also talks about a certain group that would be in Bilad al-Sham. What is Bilad al-Sham? Bilad al-Sham is basically the Levant. We're talking about Bilad al-Sham, talking about Syria, talking about Lebanon, talking about Jordan, talking about Palestine. Is that where it's going to be? Is that Bilad al-Sham? That's Bilad al-Sham. Or is it going to be in Dimashq, in Damascus? That's another hadith basically pointing that one out. Where in Damascus? And there's another hadith that there's going to be a group in Bayt al-Maqdis. Bayt al-Maqdis is basically Al-Quds, Jerusalem. So what does that look like? Can it be all? There's another hadith where it talked about it's the people that revive the Sunnah itself, meaning regardless of which location, which geographical area they may be, as long as they are the ones to hold on to the principles of the Prophet ﷺ, ulama, scholars, revive the Sunnah, whether they were living in China, Malaysia, America, regardless of where they're at, it doesn't matter. As long as they're basically doing their work in reviving the Sunnah, that they're actually part of those that are ظاهرين. They're the ones that would stand out. So it's not exclusive to a particular area, but it would be inclusive to anyone that does that, of course, that work and reviving the principle, the ilm, etc. So that's another opinion. Okay, so that's oh, look, there's the hadith that we were working on. I don't know why I didn't actually point it out right there. Okay. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا كما بدأ فطوبى للغرباء. How did they translate it? Islam began as something strange and it will return to being strange just as it began. So blessed are the strangers. I love the way so blessed.
But wasn't Fatub al-Ghurabat, wasn't that added?
فطوبى. Well, فطوبى للغرباء, like I said, some scholars said it was mudraj.
Oh, sorry.
I said some scholars said it was mudraj. Other scholars said no, it's part of the hadith. So I'm just laying out the different opinions, whether فطوبى للغرباء, whether it's part of the hadith or whether it was an addition from the narrator. Okay. So what does it mean ظاهرين على الحق؟ عن أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من قاتل لتكون كلمة الله هي العليا فهو في سبيل الله. Let's see, whoever fights so that the word of God is supreme, he's fighting in the way of God. Whoever fights so that the word of God is supreme. So whoever fights, what are we talking about fighting here? Are we talking about literally fighting in a military? So that's the first interpretation. Yes, then it would be the military. Okay? But it can be inclusive to also mean anybody that would basically get involved in making the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be superior to all. So whether you're doing da'wah, giving durus, or whether you're giving da'wah, making, I guess, in a valley fair or whatever, passing out pamphlets, you're trying to make the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be known to people. You're doing your homework in teaching the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people. You're doing your homework to letting it be heard, whether in, hey, casting a vow to eliminate the power of those that are probably working against Islam or defeating the powers of injustice, or whether we're talking about politically or whether militarily you were fighting Bashar al-Assad, all right, or fighting evil or fighting Israel, then that's basically kalimatullah litakuna kalimatullah, that's qatala fi sabilillah. All right, or any, of course, evil or unjust power. فَهُوَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. That would be basically fi sabilillah. And of course, that would be a general statement, because the more specific statement would be the person himself or herself. They basically have to have that sincerity on the inside. Okay, let's continue. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال: من مات ولم يغزو ولم يحدث به نفسه مات على شعبة من نفاق. This one is rather scary. Let's see. Whoever dies without having fought or having thought of doing so dies in a state of hypocrisy. So they never basically went in a battle. And they never talked about it with themselves. مات على شعبة من نفاق. So what does that mean? They would die in some type of hypocrisy if they never thought about jihad. Now, of course, what about me as a woman? And as a woman, should I think of that too? You don't have to as a woman. Because anyways, as a woman, there's no jihad on a woman. Her jihad is in her husband. Doesn't mean go kill him. But her jihad is basically, yes, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of, let's call it inner jihad, to basically do with your husband, because definitely, من تواضع لله رفعه. The reason why I'm obeying my husband is not because.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah, I
never thought of it like that. That it's jihad.
It's jihad. That's
Yeah.
it. It's
Yeah.
jihad. That's why the Sahaba, the female companion, came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she was wanting the reward. She comes to him and basically says, well, the men get to go for Friday, the men get to do, the public service, and they get to do the jihad, they get to be the ones, the imams, and they get to do all of that. What do we get? And the Prophet ﷺ just tells her, well, if a woman prays her 5 daily prayers and fasts her Ramadan and does the zakah and hajj and أطاعت زوجها and obeys her husband, she would be
What
told to
about
enter any of the doors of Jannah. Just right there, it's a
what
jihad.
about the sisters who aren't married?
So basically, do your jihad in being committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's principles. Right? It doesn't have to be in marriage. If, hey, the right person just didn't come, it doesn't mean that, okay, you just missed out on a lot. No, stay committed to the principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you have the time to put in a contribution within the society, do da'wah, teach Islam, maybe learn Islam, work on doing the services within the Muslim community, do that piece of homework.
They still have to face the jihad al-asghar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it could even be a bigger fitna. So for some women, especially divorcees, widows, they definitely have a bigger fitna. So just by being committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your principles, with the principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being committed that you would not engage in any promiscuous actions or any haram things, that's a jihad in itself. Because the fitna is definitely big. So if you are committed, then that's your jihad. You don't have to go and participate in a battle.
Oh yeah. Because if someone
That's a
was
battle.
single,
You're battling shaitan. You're battling your nafs.
it's not easy being a single parent. That's true.
Absolutely. You're battling shaitan, battling your own nafs. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would basically would reward you for. It's the amount of effort that you would invest in, the amount of effort that you would put in. And that's what matters. And so when we speak about that, well, can women actually do jihad? Can they? I mean, right now it doesn't take the same effort, right? The answer is it still requires, of course, some form of getting involved with men and all of that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not ask you to get involved in that. And stay away from that area, because it would basically put your ird, your chastity at risk, your life at risk.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Of course, unless the scholars said, unless, for example, somebody comes into your home or somebody attacks you, well, then in that situation, yeah, why not learn how to shoot guns and learn how to protect yourself, and I don't know, learn martial arts to protect yourself. Why not? All right, why not? But there's a difference between using it as in defense and between using it as, well, I'm here heading towards anything military. No.
Oh yeah, that's true. So
There's
every sister should learn how to defend themselves, subhanAllah. Yeah.
Right. Don't use it against your husband, but yeah. All right. عن سهل بن حنيف قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: من سأل الله تعالى الشهادة بصدق بلغه الله منازل الشهداء وإن مات على فراشه. من سأل الله تعالى الشهادة بصدق. Whoever asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be a martyr is shaheed. Well, wait a minute. So, shaheed, why would I want to die as a shaheed? Why would I want to be killed as a shaheed? I mean, right there, I'm being killed. I would want to be dying as a shaheed. Well, if you die as a shaheed, there are two kinds of shaheed. There's shaheed al-dunya and there's shaheed al-akhirah. Wait, write that down, please. Okay, sure. Let's write that down. There's shaheed al-dunya. Okay, and there's shaheed al-akhirah. And what's the difference? Okay, the difference is shaheed al-dunya. In general, the shaheed gets to intercede on Judgment Day for 70 people. The shaheed basically gets the highest levels in Jannah, along with the prophets, along with the salihin. That's a true shaheed. But who's the person that is a shaheed? That's basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to judge, and that is exclusive to the person that put their life at risk in defense of La ilaha illallah. So basically in a battle. Okay? That's in a battle. And there are other kinds of shaheeds, and those are basically, let's look at that one so we can write it a shaheed or shaheed dunya. Let's do it that way and let you see it. Okay, let's see. All right, so shaheed dunya would be different. Let's write it right there. And hold on. I'm going to get you the hadith. Okay, and let's see.
Yeah, I always wondered about that, like the differences.
Right. So here we go. So there are these shuhada, al-mat'un, al-mabtun, al-ghariq, wa sahib al-hadmi, wa shahidu fi sabilillah. So that's a hadith sahih. Can you see it? Hold on. Let me make it bigger for you. Okay. So what about these people and why did we mention them? Okay. So here's a hadith in Sahih Muslim. Okay. Let me make this one bigger. Okay. So number one is al-mat'un. So a person that basically died of a plague as a result of plague. That's al-mat'un. Al-mabtun is basically a person that died of some stomach and an abdominal GI illness, the GI disease. So what happens to them? Well, there would be shaheed too. Okay. So let's say pancreatic cancer, maybe liver cancer, whatever it is, anything that relates to the GI area, if they basically died as a result of such an illness, it doesn't have to be cancer, but anything that is mabtun, basically there. So same thing. What about a mother while having her baby? Is she considered mabtun, or is she considered bijum'a? Or is she considered that she died as a result of as a result of while she was basically having her son or baby. Al-ghariq, the person that died as a result of drowning. Sahib al-hadm, person that died as a result of their home collapsing or any, I guess, building just collapsing over their head. And ash-shahidu fi sabilillah, and a person that is a shahidu fi sabilillah. So that would be shaheed. But here's one thing. The ones that would be considered as shuhada ad-dunya, they would get a privilege, like the person that died of plague, a person and a GI illness, a person that died as a result of drowning or as a result of the home collapsing over their heads. Those would be all shaheed. But ash-shaheed fi sabilillah, okay, ash-shaheedu fi sabilillah would be the highest level of shaheed. That's what would be basically mentioned, and that's what would basically be included in that other hadith that we were talking about. That's shaheed al-dunya and shaheed al-akhirah. Shaheed al-dunya, they would get a privilege, but it wouldn't be the same rank as the shaheed al-akhirah, which is the person that was killed on the battle, or in the battle right there. So if anybody would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for shahada, and they were really honest with that wish, then that would be the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give him the level and the status of a shuhada. Status of a shuhada. Yes. Even if, look at this hadith, even if that person died on their bed. You know,
Ya Allah, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
Did Khalid ibn Walid, did he know this?
He did know this, but he was always hoping that it would be something that would really happen to him.
Subhanallah.
Right? Even though he knew this, but you start with doubt. Was I really honest? Was I really sincere? Right? That reminds me of Waraqa. Waraqa, some women, they stand out in their requests. They just want to be leaders. Yeah, subhanAllah. I mean, some women, they just want to be leaders. They don't know but how to be leaders. So Waraqa was one of these people. She wanted to be a leader. She wanted to have her own masjid, wanted to lead women in her own room, in her own house, wanted to have the Prophet ﷺ assign a mu'adhin for her. And she wanted to even die as a shaheed. Wanted to die as a shaheed. But the Prophet ﷺ told her to stay in her own home, and she would die as a shaheed in her own home. In other words, don't go to battle. That's when, of course, she continued. She had her own mu'adhin. People would go and pray in her house. She does not lead men, only the women. But then one day during Khilafat Umar ibn al-Khattab, Umar ibn al-Khattab realized that, wait a minute, the adhan from Waraqa's home, we didn't hear it. Something must have gone wrong. So they go knock at the door, and no one's answering. So Umar ibn al-Khattab then ordered that they would break into her house to see what had happened. So they break into the house to discover that she was actually killed in her own home. And the only two people that were there with her, or basically a female slave and a male slave, they were the ones that killed her. So Umar ibn al-Khattab then remembered that it was her dream to die as a shaheed, and the Prophet ﷺ told her that she would die as a shaheed and even in her own home. And he said,
Ya
Sadaqah,
Allah.
in her own home. In her own home. There is another person that comes to mind. And of course, Umar ibn Khattab sends off, if you're worried about whether those people were caught, you don't have to go looking for them. Umar ibn Khattab caught them and basically, put them to trial. Anyhow, another person that comes to mind is Haram. Or is it Sulaim? I can't remember Haram or Sulaim. I keep confusing. They're two sisters, by the way, Sulaim and Haram, but I keep confusing which one it was. I can look it up later, inshallah. So the Prophet ﷺ tells her, that she's going to be dying as a shaheed, and she wanted to go for jihad, but the Prophet ﷺ tells her that she would be accompanying a group that is heading towards Cyprus, or basically that area. And sure thing, she was basically, died heading towards and accompanying basically the army there, and heading towards al-Qustantiniya, basically between Cyprus and Turkey. And subhanAllah, I mean, okay, let's continue. We'll stop right here, inshallah. And we only have, Noura, look at this. We only have 4 ahadith left. All right? Inshallah. 4 ahadith left, inshallah. Or 5.
Subhanallah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Almost completing 200 ahadith. Well, actually almost 400. But at least from this page. And Jazakallah khairan for, combining these ahadith. That's, I think it would be fair to give credit to whoever combined these ahadith. Let's look into it. I don't know why I never mentioned the person that combined them. Let's look into it, or let's go back to the top. That's weird. They just said ahadith al-Qasar 200 ahadith. They didn't even
They wanted to get the Ajr anonymously.
Oh, there we go. It's basically Muhammad ibn Ali al-Mutari or Mutari. I don't know what his name is, but this is the person. Let's see. I don't know who that person is, but they did an outstanding job. Oh, okay, so they have a couple lectures or a couple, what is that? Oh, a couple مقالات, a couple, actually, very many. So they got a couple khutbah Jum'ah. Okay, they've been doing some homework right there. Okay, so yeah, there you go. So this is it, inshallah. We'll continue the rest of the 4/5, inshallah, tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, at least my Friday. I hope.
What a perfect, how many do we have left?
So we have 5.
Do you think we can do it in one day?
Yeah, inshallah, we'll do it in one go, inshallah. Yep, because those, inshallah, hopefully tomorrow will be the last day, and hopefully inshallah, we'll be completing tomorrow so we can go back to our tafsir. Excited. And mashallah, I'm very proud of all of those that are attending. And mashallah.
Are we still recording or no?
Yeah, we're still recording.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So let me stop